Reportedly, Ahmad Hardy likely out week 1. Mark Mitchell to Kentucky. Why are both of these pieces of news actually good for Missouri?
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso, and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And today's episode is brought to you by Kalshi. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade $10. And on today's show, of course, going to get to my reactions on Mark Mitchell reportedly heading to Kentucky. But I want to start by talking about Ahmad Hardy because, well, it seems a little counterintuitive when I say that, hey, Ahmad Hardy likely out week 1. This is something I've been speculating on for at least a few weeks here. But according to our old buddy Pete Thamel over at ESPN, Eli Drinkwitz seems to like to leak his information to good old Pete. I think this is the best news you could hope, which is Ahmad Hardy expected to be back in about mid-September. Does that mean for the KU game? Frankly, if Missouri cannot beat the Kansas Jayhawks this season without Ahmad Hardy, who may be the Tigers' best player, the Tigers don't deserve anything great this season. Sorry, Kansas fans, that's just how I feel about it. Maybe you'll prove me wrong here over the next few months, but frankly, I'm not going to be holding my breath. So this is actually fantastic news because clearly Missouri could survive without Ahmad Hardy. Could they thrive, though, to their highest potential? I don't think so. So this is as good a news as I could have possibly hoped for. Remember where we were when we learned that Ahmad Hardy was shot in the leg, for crying out loud. The bullet reportedly penetrated his femur bone, and hey, he's working his way back. Going to be back with the Tigers soon enough, though not a full go in practice, not even a partial go in practice by any indications as of yet. Though, hey, we've just seen the last media available Missouri practice. It's quite possible Hardy could gear up here this week, the next couple weeks here in practice. I still don't expect him to be available for Arkansas Pine Bluff whatsoever. KU, maybe an outside chance. I think Mississippi State, maybe that's the game you're really looking for if you're looking for, hey, an over-under at Kalshi, for example, if you're looking to put on a position over at Kalshi.com, for example. So once again, my simple take, this is great news for Missouri. It seems like Ahmad Hardy's going to be back sooner rather than later. Now, on the other hand, the news may not be as obviously good when it turns out that, well, all reports are that Mark Mitchell is going to go to Kentucky. And it seems like, well, for $6 million, frankly, who can really blame him? Missouri just simply does not have that type of money to just pull out of thin air. I don't know any other college basketball program that would at this point in the process. And to be brutally honest, when it comes to Mark Mitchell, trying to fit him into this current Missouri roster would have been awkward. And this is something I've been saying the entire time, even when I said, yes, I would, of course, all things being equal, you take Mark Mitchell on your roster, but that's not how this works. The reality is there was a big money commitment that Kentucky was willing to make that Missouri was not, especially in the reality of Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, has not signed off on this yet. And for all the people who think, oh, well, that doesn't matter, the courts overrule him, are you sure? Are you sure about anything as far as the rules go in college sports at this point? Because I'm not. I'll just speak for myself there. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying how can anybody truly be sure at this point? So even with all of the limbo that Mark Mitchell was apparently in, let's say Greg Sankey blocks this, that, or the other, to me it was long over time for Missouri to move on, to be brutally honest with you, because as much as I like Mark Mitchell, as much as I think he's a good guy, a good representative of Missouri, and obviously an effective player for the Tigers, a second-team All-SEC guy last season, among other things, well, quite honestly, the way Missouri set up this roster with athletic forwards that can fit around Jason Crow Jr. What you don't want is a guy who's going to sit in the lane and post up and spend a lot of the possession ramming his right shoulder into a guy, hoping to either bully him or draw a foul. That isn't always the most pretty basketball in the world. Sometimes it can be very effective. I just don't think it would have been particularly effective for Jason Crow Jr. And most importantly, the roster around Crow and how it's been put together by Dennis Gates and his entire staff. To me, it would have always been an awkward fit. Sure, if you can, for free, add somebody like Mark Mitchell to your roster, how could you not? And if Missouri's going to play up-tempo, well, I think, hey, Mark Mitchell is a heck of a fast break player. He's also a heck of a defensive player when Missouri has a bunch of rim protectors around him. So I don't think the defensive part would have been a problem whatsoever. However, offensively, especially in the half court, would that have worked? Would that actually have been an awkward fit? I really think it would have. So really, this might have been a win-win for Missouri and Mitchell that it didn't come together. Again, if indeed Missouri had realized and Mitchell had realized this was a huge possibility at the beginning, and if they had known the entire time, well, Mitchell's going to come back next year, then you would build your roster and plan differently. But that's obviously not the reality. So the fact that Kentucky can come in at the 11th hour with this massive offer to make Mark Mitchell the $6 million man, frankly, how can you blame Mark for taking the money? I certainly can't. Now, at the same time, if you're a Missouri fan and you're going, well, this does hurt his legacy, I can't blame you, because when he comes, presumably if he's with the Wildcats coming to play in Mizzou Arena in January, I'm not going to tell you to cheer for him, that's for sure, because I won't be. However, again, this is just me. I'm not going to boo the guy either, because again, if I were him, what would I have done? Let's be fair here. However, there are choices, there are consequences to your choices, there are trade-offs to everything, and I'm sorry, Mark Mitchell, you're not going to be getting any cheers from me. And you know what, with weird times in Mizzou football and basketball, of course, weird times in college basketball, a weird Locked On Mizzou posting here on a late Saturday evening in the offseason. Well, let's get a little bit weird on the topics coming up here in a little bit. I want to get off topic. If you want to not stick with me, I get it. But you know what? If you're a big John Miller fan, you're going to love this topic, because I think the Kansas City Chiefs are in for a reckoning this season. I'll explain here in just a little bit. But first, let's talk about Kalshi, because this episode is brought to you by Kalshi. And before the season even kicks off, of course, everyone like me with a big mouth is making a prediction. Who's going to win the division, the playoffs, the conference? Who's going to win the whole freaking thing? Well, on Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. And truly, that's the fun thing about this, because as I've been saying all offseason, I think the Rams, you look at a 16% chance implied chance for the Rams to win the Super Bowl based on the Kalshi market right now. I think they're just way too big of a favorite right now. So you can fade that, or you can bet on somebody, or you can trade on somebody else, and you can trade in and out of these positions all season. That's the beauty of Kalshi to me, because on Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. Trade the pick, trade the game, and more on Kalshi. Download the Kalshi app and use code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade $10. That is KALSHI, Kalshi. Trade on anything. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kalshi products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory. By the way, folks, in case you haven't noticed, the Super Bowl is on Valentine's Day this year? Who are the ad wizards that came up with that one? Are you trying to get all of us sports fan men out there divorced? Because frankly, that seems like the point of Valentine's Day anyway, was to get all of us dudes in trouble. And especially for those of us who have wives with winter birthdays. Yeah, my God, pile it on by all means. But I digress, because I do think that Kansas City Chiefs are in a weird spot right now. I'm a lifelong Kansas City Chiefs fan. And you have to admit, after the last few years of offense, despite, well, a couple years ago, the Chiefs making the Super Bowl, losing to the Eagles in fairly humiliating fashion, you do have to wonder, is this the end of peak Patrick Mahomes? Or maybe this knee injury, a similar one that Tom Brady suffered in about the middle of his career, could this be actually a blessing in disguise? Could this force him to be a more to make a more pocket-based approach, and maybe even more importantly, force Andy Reid and the Chiefs organization to sign somebody like Kenneth Walker, another Super Bowl MVP, by the way. Hey, a couple Super Bowl MVPs in the backfield, not too shabby. But run the football more, get under center more, that type of deal. The Chiefs do have to do better at wide receiver, and I do have to say, after all the weird activity, the Lakers selling recently, all the talk of, well, the Lakers owner, who's obviously the Dodgers, the former Lakers owner owns the Dodgers as well, the weirdness there. Is this maybe the time the Hunts sell? What could they have done more? I tend to guess that, I don't know, maybe the Hunts are just the type that are just going to, or old school, going to keep it in the family. But if they wanted to cash in, could you blame them? After winning 3 Super Bowls, now they've secured this new arena in Kansas. Oh, sorry, folks. That was tough to get out. But from their perspective, can you really blame the Hunts if they at least considered selling the team at this point? And I just do have to wonder. I have to admit, I was expecting, I don't know how many Super Bowls I was expecting with Patrick Mahomes in his 30s. I just was expecting more chances. And now with a knee injury, the Chiefs, moving into a different part of their franchise's history, I'm just a little bit weirded out by it. And yet, if they can just run the ball a little more, if they can just make Patrick's life a little bit easier offensively, maybe they can get back. I don't think it's going to be this season. I'm just hoping that this is not the end of peak Mahomes, and this is more of a transition into a different era of Patrick Mahomes that is different, but also great in its own way. That's just me. So, hey, thanks for hanging with me and going with, well, a little Chiefs topic here at the end. I couldn't help myself. What can I tell you? I was sitting around all day waiting for Eli Drinkwitz to talk about Ahmad Hardy. We get all this Mark Mitchell information. Frankly, I drove 5 hours across Illinois and Indiana after the Garth Brooks concert. So if I seem a little tired today, it's because I am. Thanks for putting up with me. I thank you all, as always, for listening to Locked On Mizzou. I'll see you Monday.